The Young Gunz, part of Philly's state property crew, were primed for big things in hip-hop. They joined Roc-A-Fella at its peak, dropping a killer debut and snagging a Grammy nod for their single. However, the unfortunate thing is, their arrival coincided with Roc-A-Fella's implosion, and they became casualties of war in the Hove, Biggs, and Dash drift. Now we're gonna answer a couple of questions, like why did their second album flop? Where did they go? What was their time on Roc-A-Fella like? And who did they beef with? So, let's break it down. What up guys, Ali here and welcome to Ali Talks Music. Add me on Instagram at Ali Talks Music as well. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now let's get into the video. Now the 2000s was a great time to be alive in the world of hip-hop. Jay-Z reigned supreme as a lyricist and a business mogul. Slim Shady was coming up with the most out-of-pocket stories. Lyricism was still very important in hip-hop and beef was everywhere. And it was within this hip-hop wonderland that the Young Gunz first came into the world. During a time when crews and duos were common, Jay-Z decided to create a group of his own. Jay-Z looked beyond New York down to Philly, picking out the best: Beanie Sigel, Freeway, Petey Crack, Emilio Sparks, and Oskino. Then came the Young Gunz, the fresh faces of the crew, and they were signed as teens. One of their major roles was to keep Roc-A-Fella young and fresh while the label pushed its rising stars. They were the next wave, meant to keep Roc-A-Fella's flame burning bright for the coming generation, ensuring the label stayed fresh and connected to the youth. The duo, in its earliest form, was composed of childhood friends, Young Chris and Neef Buck. They were both born around 1983 and raised in Philadelphia. The pair met each other when they were just 12 years old and began rapping together ever since. At the time, they simply went by Chris and Neef, and their official name Young Gunz was not adopted until much later. Now their career took a very drastic turn when the pair were brought before Biggs, Dash, and Jay-Z by their mutual friend Stevie J. They were signed to The Roc sometime in the early 2000s and entered a 3-year artist development program as they waited for their chance to prove themselves. At the time, Jay-Z was talking about retirement. In fact, he was always talking about retirement. And this caused Dame Dash to go into a signing spree. Dash had a sincere feeling that Jay-Z was going to retire, but little did Dame Dash know at the time that Jay-Z was only going to retire from him. Now, one of the first times the pair was introduced to the world was through a shout-out that Hove gave them on the track Takeover, in which he referred to them as Chris and Neef. However, the duo didn't really make major appearances until around 2002. And that's when they appeared in the State Property soundtrack, as well as appearing in the film. Now, right off the bat, it became very apparent that of the two, Chris was the more skilled lyricist. And on top of that, he had a stronger desire to compete with other hip-hop artists in the game. Dame Dash, who was looking to big up his new artists, gave them some advice. He told them that, look, if you want to get features with big name artists on this label, you need to be in the room with them at all times. So, Chris did just that. He was always around in the studio, and that's probably why he appeared on 4 of the 13 tracks of the State Property album, while Neef, who hung back, only appeared on about 1 track. This became a trend within the duo. Chris was continually outshining Neef, appearing on this feature and that feature, while Neef was continually relegated to the background. Young Chris and Neef Buck were finally recognized as Young Gunz around November of 2002 when they appeared on the second disc of Jay-Z's The Blueprint 2.
You ain't pushing the rails like these, my nigga, please.
From that point onwards, they gained more traction, becoming more recognizable, and received more support from the rest of their label. Then in late 2003, the Gunz appeared on Freeway's debut album, Philadelphia Freeway, and featured far more prominently on State Property's second album, The Chain Gang Volume 2. It's very important to note that on both of these projects, Chris continued to perform without Neef, while Buck just didn't. Now, their appearance on Volume 2 managed to push the Young Gunz into the mainstream, especially when their song Can't Stop Won't Stop was released as the lead single.
Home base, yeah, I'm cool back there. Keep your mouth shut, we might do that there.
The single served as the Gunz' debut single and was a huge success, peaking at number 14 on the Hot 100 and receiving a lot of radio play. In fact, the song was so successful that around 2004 it was nominated for a Grammy for Best Rap Performance by a Duo or Group. However, it did not win. Now, the success of this single gave the label the green light they needed to go ahead with a Young Gunz album, and the pair got straight to work. In the meantime though, they dropped a mixtape around December of 2003 called Youngest in Charge Volume 1. This mixtape was so well received that when their album dropped it was almost guaranteed to succeed. Titled Tough Love, the album came out around February of 2004 and sold about 128,000 copies in its first week, peaking at number 3 on the Billboard 200, one spot behind The College Dropout. Now, those sales were not insane back in the day. Back then, if you weren't doing about 200K first week, then you were probably not in the big league. The album featured a remixed version of Can't Stop, Won't Stop with Chingy.
Can't stop, won't stop, Chingy and the Gunz, cause we get down, baby, we get down.
As well as two singles, No Better Love and Friday Night.
Don't stop giving me your love, it's my heart's been racing for your love.
At this point, Chris and Neef were on fire. However, if you're old enough by now, you probably know that all good things come to an end. While the pair had all the right ingredients to find success, skill, charisma, youth, the backing of Jay-Z, and their affiliation with Roc-A-Fella, outside interference really affected the group. Around the time that Young Gunz had been signed to Roc-A-Fella, the cracks were already beginning to show in the foundation of the imprint. Dash and Hov were disagreeing all the time, and they had different visions of what they wanted the label to look like. So by 2004, when the Young Gunz were entering the mainstream and just beginning to taste what success felt like, it all imploded in a very spectacular ball of fire. Jay then became the president of Def Jam, leaving all of the artists on the imprint scrambling and forced to pick sides. At the same time, Beanie Sigel, the head honcho of State Property, got locked up. He got a year-long bid, and he got very salty with his crew. The thing is, while Beanie Sigel was in prison, nobody in his crew came to visit him. Nobody but Oskino Sparks. This left Beanie feeling like he was abandoned by his people. And when the whole drama between Jay and Dash was unfolding, Beanie chose to side with Dame Dash. But with Beanie Sigel being behind bars, he could not steer the ship. His solution, as petty as it sounds, was to put a pause on State Property as a whole until he finished his bid. So essentially, Beanie Sigel was asking his friends to stop working until he got out of jail. So, what do you think happened? Some people in the group began to rebel. Some claimed they never asked to be in the group, nor did they need it to sell records. The crew essentially broke up. Meanwhile, Chris and Neef, who had a bond that far outdated State Property, chose to stay with Jay. I remember Dame was telling me to do a solo project. That's kind of why I went with Jay. You know, my loyalty to Neef. We already did the first album and I'ma follow up. You feel me? That was my situation. I think back on it sometimes, cause I never looked at it as being the Bobby of the group. Dame was probably looking at that shit. But we went with Jay and we did what we did. By the time the dust had settled, the Young Gunz were officially standing as their own duo and not as a group within another crew. They chose to stay with Jay-Z and around 2004 dropped an independent mixtape, one called Get In Where You Fit In Part 1.
Shotgun and block running in that CL. Kinda cool, kinda smooth like I'm CL.
Then it was finally time for them to drop another album, and they did so in the form of Brothers From Another. Now, unlike their previous project, this one did not perform very well on the charts, despite a lot of promotion from Jay-Z and a Swiss Beats produced single called Set It Off. The album was a huge flop. This right here was the beginning of the end for Young Gunz. Young Gunz then appeared in State Property 2 and dropped another mixtape around August of 2005, one called Get In Where You Fit In Part 2. Now, before their album dropped, the Young Gunz became involved in the middle of a feud that they had no business getting involved in at all. Well, they kinda did, but they were pretty much pawns in a greater game. The feud we're talking about is between the ever problematic Game and Hove and the rest of Roc-A-Fella. At first the beef was quite subliminal because the Game was tiptoeing around dissing Hove, but the first real shot came around 2004 when Game rapped, "Don't do button-up shirts or drive Maybachs."
Back, homie, I'm bringing CA back, and I don't do button-up shirts or drive Maybachs.
This appeared on his West Side Story cut. It was a pretty obvious dig at Jay. However, the Game said it was aimed at Ja Rule, and Hove, as always, kept his cool and did not engage. But then Hove did his Dear Summer freestyle and repeatedly used the word Game in his freestyle, which had people think he was talking about the Game. The thing is, this session included Memphis Bleek and Young Gunz, two of the Game's not so favorite people. Now of course Jay-Z played it off. He said there was no beef with the Game, but word got to Game on tour, who was not buying it. The Game then hit back during a show in Amsterdam, calling out Jay, Bleek, Beanie Sigel, and even threw a dig at the Young Gunz. As far as Memphis Bleek and the Young Gunz, I'll bury those dudes, man. I'm on a whole nother level. I'm not saying I'm on Hove's level, but I'm damn sure not on Bleek and the Young Gunz level. I'll squash them, man. I don't want to beef with Jay. I don't want to beef with anyone I got respect for, but at the same time, respect only goes so far. Now this is where the Young Gunz get involved. The Game released a 15-minute freestyle titled 300 Bars and Running, and in it, he name-checked everyone, including Hove, G-Unit, and Memphis Bleek. In the diss aimed at Bleek, the Game specifies that he would rather rap battle Neef and Buck than Bleek, and that he would smack them around if he didn't like what they had to say. Now, this is when things escalated even further, when the Young Gunz and Punda Brown responded in a freestyle called Game Over. And yeah, it all hit the fan from there. Young Chris continued to diss the Game in freestyles and interviews, and so did the Game. Some more diss tracks came out of it, and even Cat Williams himself got involved and rapped on the track Palm Pilot with the Game.
I'm warning you, sweetie, y'all can't beat me. You'll see when you meet me.
This is after Gunz dissed his character in the 2002 film Friday After Next on their single Set It Off. Fortunately, the beef eventually faded away because at the time the Game was dealing with so many beefs that he had no time to focus on Young Gunz. Now in 2012, Young Chris and the Game took a photo together and even admitted that their beef was very petty. Meanwhile, while the Young Gunz chose to stay with Jay-Z, their buzz was dwindling very fast. Their label was falling apart, and after their second album did not do very well, no one higher up was really pushing for a Young Gunz album. In addition, Young Chris had been pushing for a solo album since around 2006, and he would not find success until several years later. By 2009, Jay left Def Jam, turned his attention to Roc Nation, leaving the Gunz behind, while Neef continued to stay out of the spotlight. By 2010, Chris was ready to go solo and had Neef sign some paperwork. And so the Young Gunz officially split. None of them really gained success after breaking up, but Young Chris definitely gave it his best shot. They have both since returned to the underground mixtape circuit, and they're a far cry from where they used to be decades ago. So why didn't the Young Gunz work out? Label situations, Jay-Z leaving the label, and because of that they were not putting out enough music to sustain their fans, who eventually went elsewhere. Young Gunz get about 123,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and their most listened to songs are No Better Love, Can't Stop Won't Stop, Can't Stop Won't Stop Again, Set It Off, and Tough Love. That's it for me, it's your boy Ali. What happened to Young Gunz in your opinion? Let me know down below. Also add me on Instagram at Ali Talks Music. Till next time, peace.